I want to welcome you to the action-packed meeting of the Economic Development Committee, joined by my very able colleague, Mr. Joe Busciano. And we are ready to roll, or rather begin, should I say. Do we have any comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
We have none?
None whatsoever.
Should we wait another hour and see who comes in, or should we just proceed? Okay. We'll proceed. We'll close public comment. And Mr. Busciano, if you don't have any objections, I'm going to move items 3 through 16 on consent. Having closed the public comment. And with that, Mr. CLA, where are we next? Item 1, that's a hint.
Well, item number 1 are reports from the Economic and Workforce Development Department and City Administrative Officer relative to the citywide economic development strategy and 5-year implementation plan. This has also been referred to the ad hoc on Comprehensive Job Creation Plan Committee.
Okay, excellent. We've been joined by our colleague, Monica Rodriguez. Welcome. Okay, gentlemen, the floor is yours. Item 1, Citywide Economic Development Strategy. Something we've all been waiting for.
Good afternoon, council members. John Reamer, the interim general manager of the Economic Workforce Development Department. I'm pleased to bring before you today, in response to our last meeting, our citywide economic development strategy. We being the Economic Workforce Development Department, directed by you to, in partnership with the CLA, bring you what I'm going to refer to as a map. Even though we refer to it lovingly and emotionally as it says, I'm going to refer to it as a map for today.
Okay.
It's the mandate that you have given us to develop a citywide economic development strategy. This strategy, what you will find is it's going to provide access for businesses, for workers, for employers, for employees, to opportunities that result in economic growth and development. And in doing so, it's going to happen as we follow this plan that leads to economic growth and inclusion, this plan that provides economic vitality and business success, this plan that provides prosperity for all Angelenos. Now, we know that maps are absolutely worthless unless there are those who follow them, the travelers and the guides. And I want to pause and thank all of those who have helped put this map together, if you will. The mayor's office, the council office, the CLO, the CLA, the CAO, departments, Port of Los Angeles, city clerk, DWP, ITA, Public Works, the planning department, cultural affairs, DOT, the LA Convention and Tourism, certainly housing, and then most and last but not least, the Economic Workforce Development Department and the fine men and women there that have labored passionately to put this together. I submit to you that this map is the tool, but it is not the journey. It is a 5-year journey that we as a city family are going to embark upon. We have 15 action items that we believe will, when we finish them, take us to that place where we want to go, that again provides both economic inclusion and prosperity for businesses and employees. It's one that will position our city to be globally impressive, but not just impressive, but embracing of all those who would come here and will want to come here. It is a plan that will spend time both recruiting as well as building and assisting in enhancing businesses and opportunities, not just for those businesses that are here, but for those individuals that have barriers, those individuals that are underrepresented. So we're very pleased and proud of this. Again, I thank you for this opportunity to come. I have here Sam Hughes, Assistant General Manager, that will say a few words to give you a greater insight into what we have, and then we'll answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you. In short, before you, the strategy was developed over the course of about 12 months and included multiple analytical tracks and ongoing stakeholder feedback. That included, but it's not limited to, a number of community stakeholder meetings, ongoing steering committee involvement, and just a full-blown analytical review of, an analysis of the existing city conditions as well as opportunities for growth. And so to that end, you have before you a modified citywide economic development strategy. The city is in a good shape, many would argue, particularly over the past 10 years. The total number of jobs has returned to pre-recession peak. Certainly in 2009, the unemployment rate was in double digits, near 11, 12%. Right now, we're at roughly 4%. So certainly the economy is healthy, and that's good, and we're grateful for that. But like many other cities, LA must work to ensure that economic growth and benefits extend to all. And unfortunately, the median household income for the city, for those residing in the city, is just above $50,000 per year. In the county, it's upwards of $65,000. In the state, we're just north of $70,000. So the city has a long way to go. There are Angelenos, certainly, that have not necessarily participated in much of the economic boom that others have. Still others might suggest that poverty persist in the plains of prosperity. And later in the said, you'll see that there was a need to focus on certain neighborhoods to try to bring about the equality that unfortunately is missing from today's landscape. And so within the said, you have Volume 1, which outlines the strategy. And there are 8 goals, high-level goals, and some might say it's so high-level, it's far-reaching, and maybe might not be achieved. To the contrary, we believe that the action items, as expressed by the general manager, the 15 action items will allow us to achieve the numerous goals that are before us. But for those action items, we might come up a bit short. And so bear with me as I'd like to go through some of the goals so that you have a sense about what's going to happen over the next 5 years and what the steering committee, the city departments at large, concluded is in the best interest of the city of Los Angeles. Goal 1 is to strengthen LA's position as a world-class city. 2 is to ensure growth is equitably distributed. 3 is to grow the resilience of core industries. 4, to catalyze emerging and growing industries. To support the city's small businesses, which is critical to the expansion here within the city and really the region at large. To create financial and economic security for disadvantaged Angelenos. Certainly to develop world-class infrastructure to enable economic growth. And lastly, to enhance the delivery of economic development programs. In order to do that, we need the implementation plan. And so at first glance, one sees this huge volume, hundreds of pages. This is a lot. It's bedtime reading, and it'll put you to sleep quick, fast, in a hurry. But if you really get into it, it gives me pause to stand up and stand straight to know that there's an opportunity for this city to improve the conditions of many that are struggling and to enhance areas where we're doing great. And so to that end, there are 4 thematic action items, if you will. And there's to strengthen the city's economic delivery system, strengthen the economy of the communities, and certainly empower city residents, and lastly, strengthen city businesses and industries. And we'll be able to do that through the action items as articulated in the said, which is before you. Under actions to strengthen the city's economic delivery system, we're looking to allocate resources as necessary for economic development and to formalize coordination to restructure the city's economic delivery system. Currently, we have the Department of Economic and Workforce Development. There are a number of other departments throughout the city that also serve economic development-related activities. And the upside of the approach to achieve the goals we have is to collaborate and to coordinate our efforts such that we can move forward in delivering what's before us over the next 5 years. And so we're excited about the prospect of doing that. We're looking forward to hearing from you all, to answer your questions as best we can, and continue to be team players as we move forward. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. This is, I guess the fourth or fifth iteration of a plan. Since I've been here, at least, we've been talking about creating a plan. Can you tell us, is there anything new here that we haven't seen before, or are we just sort of rewarming stuff up or rearranging chairs? What's new about this version that's going to hopefully move us forward in a more positive, proactive, effective direction?
One of the biggest things that's new to me is certainly the Economic Development Working Group that will lead the effort to actually get things done. And it's critical. Certainly earlier, a number of departments were mentioned. Not only they were part of the steering committee, but they will be active participants in ensuring that we implement the actions that are before you. I think without that type of cooperation, it's likely that we can continue to be in our respective sectors and not necessarily address those issues before us so that we can meet the needs of the residents as well as the businesses. So that's one matter specifically that I believe is most important for us actually being able to get things done.
And that has not happened in the past, from your point of view?
In my point of view, we have not been as successful as we can be. I believe another benefit of accepting the modified SEDS before you is that the city will be in a position to apply for federal grants through the Economic Development Administration. Upon council approval of the SEDS before you, we'll certainly format a SEDS so that we in turn can be responsive to EDA, so that we can submit that SEDS and then subsequently apply for federal funds to help us fulfill some of our obligations as obligated in the SEDS before you, and certainly take part in any revitalization efforts to take on.
Does EWDD have the capacity to apply for and to manage these grants as they may come down the line at this point?
Hopefully not. And I say hopefully not because I'm trusting and believing that this is going to be a successful tool that's going to afford us to obtain a number of grants. And if I were to say yes now, we're not getting any grants now.
Right.
So
right.
to say yes would be status quo.
Yeah.
But I want to build a little bit on what Sam alluded to. What's different? What's different is this committee. What's different is our mayor. What's different is the partnership that we have amongst the many departments. We've seen and enjoyed that in our efforts with the CLA to bring this before you. Many of the recommendations will seem the same and sound the same, but we are putting a 5-year clock on ourselves to say that we really cannot wait. I was at home yesterday with my wife.
Well, some of us would say that we can't wait for 5 years to see see what kind of results it's going to be.
I understand.
Yeah.
I do understand. But I think we also will appreciate the fact that for this to be done right and well, it will take that. This is something that will not happen overnight, and this is aggressive. It really is aggressive. As I pour through this, this is jam-packed with goals, with tasks, with metrics from day one. As a matter of fact, we've already started in many respects with regard to planning, taking a look at many different zoning issues in the city as to how we can revisit that. Already having dialogues with the EDA as it relates to them knowing that this is coming, pending your decision. A lot of the groundwork, the preparatory groundwork has happened. But even more so, it's coming together and recognizing using the many economic development tools, some of which are on agenda today, opportunity zones being one of them. There are a number of things that we've packed into this, taking advantage of the, and I don't need to use that in a negative sense, the LA Development Fund. We are using as many tools as we can and bringing on as many partners in the city as we can, because we have a challenge here. And as Mr. Hughes alluded to, the median income, that's something that we all will want to address, and address it aggressively and do what we can. And it's going to happen, quite frankly, through some tried and true old practices, employers and employees working together, and are creating an environment where employers want to come here, they want to stay here, and they thrive and grow and develop here. And it creates that environment, an opportunity for men and women to be able to work and not leave. That's the long and short of this. And yes, it's 5 years, absolutely correct. And we need to get it done 5 years ago. But I am confident that this is a solid map and a solid plan. And with the leadership that we've had from our mayor and this council, and the departments coming together like I have not seen before, quite frankly, I believe that this is what's different from times past.
You both referenced this working group of city departments. How do you envision that? Who's going to convene it? Who do we hold responsible for what this working group does or doesn't do?
You're looking at them? We will, the
We,
Economic Workforce Development
EWDD?
Department, we will.
So you're going to convene it?
We will bring everybody together, but not so much from the standpoint of leading, but it'll be a round table. We're all doing this together because everyone brings strengths to this group, this relationship, this partnership. So we will need everybody. We really will. I was anticipating some of the questions that you might bring before us today, and one of the things that I share with Sam, as those who are listening to this might be saying, well, you focused in on 5 areas in the city. East San Fernando, the east side of Los Angeles, South Los Angeles, the harbor, Pico Union. What about the rest of the city? The fact of the matter is, this is the city of Los Angeles. We have 5 areas that historically have been underrepresented, but we will need all of the city of Los Angeles to make sure that we don't have 5 areas that need certain focus. So even though we are going to give attention to those 5, it's certainly not going to be losing the fact that we do need the airport. We need them. There are other areas of the city that, working together, all boats will rise, but it will have to be a collected effort.
Still rise at the harbor, right?
So you envision this working group meeting once a week, once a month, once a year? What kind of frequency do we see?
I don't have the frequency just yet. I do know that we have in this plan metrics that we've put there to report to you on a regular basis. Within the first 30 to 60 days, we will be convening this group. One of the things that we will be putting together is our version of a stat, if you will. If I were to call it a said stat, then I would do that. But we want to challenge ourselves, and we want to make sure that we are accountable to you and to all those who will benefit from this SEDS, this map, if you will.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Mr. Busciano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your leadership on this, and thanks for the presentation. I'm often, when you said that, John, the fact that we are one city, I'm often reminded that when I wore the badge, it says City of Los Angeles, didn't say Harbor Division or Mission Division. So I really appreciate that comment, because oftentimes those representing this committee often feel misrepresented when it comes to economic development strategies throughout the city. So happy to see it moving forward. I too, Mr. Chairman, am concerned about a 5-year plan. Feel that when it comes to economic development, it should take place yesterday as it relates to creation of jobs. But I also understand the purpose of having looking at a plan, both short-term and long-term goals. My concern I had was in this latest budget hearing and negotiations, there was a line item budget on a SEDS implementation position.
Yes.
And that was taken out.
Right.
So can you just address who will oversee the implementation beginning this next fiscal year? Are we waiting on grant dollars? If you can just
in our transmittal to you, we attempted to revisit that and let you know that we do need a person to shepherd
Right.
just convening all the departments. You must know that Sam Hughes and myself will be intimately involved in this, but having that person day to day. So that need is still there. We obviously will do whatever we need to do to make this happen, but closed mouths don't get fed. So
Right.
yes, we still need that person.
Right. Would there, looking at federal grant dollars can help fund that, or are we going to go back to the city budget when that time comes?
Up front, more than likely, it would be general fund dollars that would
Mhm.
be needed, but we
FSR requests? Or?
we will, yes,
Okay.
we will explore every opportunity that we can to use grant dollars.
Got it. And then in preparation for the Olympics, in looking at the SEDS before us, it was no mention of the Olympics. How do we ensure that the strategies will be carried out in conjunction with the planning of the Olympics?
The 5-year plan will speak to, and that's why the partnership is as broad as it is. All possibilities, not just the Olympics. I would argue that there's this little stadium in a city not far from us where the Rams will be playing. That will be done before the Olympics get here, and yet I'm sure that Los Angeles will be impacted by a great number of economic opportunities that will spur from
From it.
whatever events that might happen there, a
Right.
Super Bowl. And so without going into the details, it in the spirit of it, it is here. And I appreciate you asking that question. The one thing that we will enjoy on this journey is our growing and learning together. This is a living, breathing document. In the transmittal that we sent to you, we're asking for you to give us latitude, not only to package it so that we can present it to EDA, but also to allow us to modify it in response to grants and opportunities that are out there, and then come back before you and let you know where we're going. Because what we see here today, I'm hoping it doesn't look like this 5 years from now. I'm hoping that it has become more robust and more detailed and more involved. That's what we should all want. So this is a good framework to begin the journey on that first step, but we are looking to do great things with this. So we have in the back of our heads not just the Olympics, but many other regional elements and opportunities that will come for economic growth and development that we plan on availing ourselves of.
Appreciate that response. Also, there's also always a concern in preserving the middle class. There's always that threat of the middle class falling into being vulnerable, falling into lower income classes. 30%. Many people who are paying more than 30% of their gross income on housing are considered middle class. How do we support the middle, the missing middle, ensuring that is strong and growing over the next 5 years?
The plan does specifically address workforce development and how critically important it is to make sure that no one is left unprepared. And that, quite frankly, should be a highlight for any business, any investor that want to come to our region, that we have a well-trained, seasoned workforce. So we will spend time, we already have access to WIODA dollars, and we've been successful in bringing more grants in for workforce development. We will continue to partner with both institutions and our nonprofits in the area, because it's not just developing a workforce, but it's also not leaving anyone out of the workforce. We have individuals that are in our region that are facing barriers to employment that we certainly do not want to dismiss, and we want to keep that in focus. LA Rise has been a fantastic program that we've used, benefited from as a city family, and we want to continue to invest in vehicles like that. That is part of this plan.
Got it. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. On your comment, the councilman's comment about the Olympics, I think it certainly would be advisable to include them as a part of the working group. We know that they're looking at small business, local business participation as they move closer, and I think it would be a good idea to get them involved early on in terms of helping to flesh out our plan in a way that, is meaningful and is relevant.
Also, if I can, Mr. Chair, on that piece of the working group, is there a plan to include the council offices that are in this SEDS before us, that are impacted by the
Certainly.
SEDS?
I don't know why you wouldn't be.
Okay.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
This is one big family.
Very good. Thank you.
Mrs. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Reamer, and for this presentation this afternoon. And I appreciate all the comments that my colleagues have made. But I'm happy that we're here today with this guiding document, which I think is valuable to the city, given all of the different investments that are happening in a number of different areas. We have to have a coordinated strategy. But to that point, without the resources for them to manage it, we're setting you up to fail. And when we talk about budgetary matters, and when we talk about where our priorities lie, and when we talk about, this being a meaningful effort in each of the areas, by and large, which have been left behind, much of the areas that we represent, I would look forward to this continued conversation to assuring that you have the adequate staffing that is needed to assure the successful implementation of this effort. Because anything short of that, and I know that, I always think back about what the department structures used to look like and how so much has been consolidated into EWDD, into HSID, and all these other areas. When we look at how we've seen marked growth in our financials in the city, and yet we still haven't grown our staffing levels to the degree that they were pre-recession levels, we're also not setting them up for success. And so I just want to be clear that I am not going to be angry with you for not having the resources. You advocated for them. I think it's our responsibility to assure you get the staffing that you need in order to fulfill these objectives. Because the reality is that our areas are being left behind. When we talk about a $50,000 median household income and the cost of living in the city, we are not doing our constituents any great service by not making sure that we are doing everything possible to create those economic opportunities for them to get a share of the economic prosperity that we are experiencing in the city and in the state. So, colleagues, I thank you for your comments. I think it's really important that we recognize that it is of tremendous value to have a staff that will be point to help continue to make sure that we're moving this ball forward. So I thank you for your work.
All right, I think we want a staff that's on point and a committee that's on point. And to that end, I think my colleagues would join me in requesting at least a quarterly update on where we are with the SEDS, with our master plan, so that we can identify early on if there are any needs that aren't being met or any other resources we need to have in order to make sure we're following through on the promise that this presents. Any other questions, comments, members? Okay, I understand CLA has some amendments you want to read into the record?
Clay McCarter with the CLA. And actually, one comment on including the Olympics in the working group. We think that's a very good idea, but the envisionment of the working group would be that it'd be like only city departments, and that we would bring in outside entities as needed. So I think to keep it as a city family working group would be more appropriate, and we could certainly bring in LA 28 and other nonprofits as needed. So that'd be one.
Well, I just want to make sure they're brought in sooner rather than later, because they do have an integral role to play. They're going to be a tremendous resource that I think we should plug into as soon as possible, not as an afterthought or not as
Understood.
enough said.
And if we have 4 recommendations to the report. We would recommend that we delete recommendations 4 and 5 and add a new recommendations as follows. Direct the interim general manager of the EWDD or designee to prepare and submit grant proposals and applications to secure EDA and non-EDA economic development funds from public, private, nonprofit, or governmental entities, subject to the city's grants regulations. And then we would recommend that we delete recommendation 6 and add a new recommendation as follows. Direct the interim general manager of the EWDD or designee, with the assistance of the CLA, to review the SEDS and make amendments as needed. Delete recommendation 7 and add a new recommendation. Direct the interim general manager of the EWDD or designee to report to council annually on economic development program metrics, progress towards meeting the goals of the evaluation framework, and grant applications awards. And the following new recommendation. Direct the interim general manager of the EWDD or designee to transmit the SEDS annual report as required by the EDA subject to council approval.
Good. And again, I just want to stress, in addition to these annual reports, this committee would like a quarterly report on what's happening.
Just do that to include it as well.
Okay. If there are no objections, we will approve. I'm sorry, Sam, one more?
It's a small matter.
Yes.
I don't know how we need to do this, but to the extent that there are technical adjustments we need to make to the SEDS, can we have the authority to do that without having to come back? Would you guys give us that direction?
I think that'd be fine, yes. Problem with that?
No objection.
No objection. Okay, we'll approve the recommendations as amended, and thank you, gentlemen, for your efforts and for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. You missed the public comment, but I will permit you a chance to come up and state your piece. I said you missed it, but I will let you come up and state your piece if you choose to do so at this time.
We're on this item, right?
On this item.
Fuck the hell out of the CLA and fuck your stupid recognition of this proposal, because as you already know that these special district pilot projects and asking the state and the federal government to subsidize you with fundings for these fucked up projects are unrealistic. As we already heard in the news that Trump told jackass from up north, Mr. Faggot ass, your stupid governor up there, that he ain't gonna get the funding to finish his stupid speed train. And for this purpose, we have fucking asshole Jose Weezer on item 5, item 6, item 7, jackass Krikorian on 8, 9, Weezer, fuck Weezer.
All right, sorry, you were supposed to make a comment on this item.
That fucking asshole doesn't belong on any of
This
these
is not on item
motions.
one.
All these motions are about the
Okay.
public's interest and budget.
You're out of here.
So fuck
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Fuck your inactive bar license, Mr. Weezer, 195726
Thank you,
for the
sir, you're
record.
out.
I got 3 fucking seconds. 2,
The seconds are
1,
gone.
fuck you.
I apologize for, well, you know. Okay, let's move on to item number 2.
Item number 2 is a motion from Council Members Price and Buscaino relative to ensuring that the federal opportunity zone regulations are supporting the city's goals.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
John Wickham with the CLA's office. Just as a quick introduction, as you know, the federal opportunity zones are a new program. They're creating some opportunity for investment to come into the city. The federal government is refining its regulations. There is a comment period that's open right now, and there are opportunities for the city to submit comments over the next couple of weeks. And so the motion in front of you would provide instruction to EWDD and the Housing Department to submit comments. And so this would actually be an opportunity for EWDD and the Housing Department to maybe give you some thoughts on what kinds of comments they would recommend that the council and the city submit in response to those regulations.
Okay. Let's get some thoughts on what we might submit.
Certainly. If we hearken back to December of 18, we had the opportunity to present to Treasury some of our concerns with respect to the initial regulations as Treasury articulated. And at that time, quite honestly, I think Treasury was somewhat myopic in their view about the intended benefits of opportunity zones without necessarily considering potential collateral challenges. And so in our response to Treasury, we outline a number of different things that they should consider, not the least of all some accountability metrics, as well as certainly urging states that don't have tax codes similar to the IRS to adopt tax codes similar to the IRS, so that anyone who is otherwise subject to capital gains, they not only get the benefit on the federal side, they also get it on the state side. And certainly we wanted the regs to reflect some sensitivity with respect to community benefits and things of that sort. And so that correspondence was sent to Treasury December of 18, and since then, Treasury has released something as recent as earlier this month asking for additional recommendations and answering certain questions that they raised as a result of getting what we sent and other municipalities sent 6 months ago. And so certainly I'm joined with HSID right now, who's working with us to send a response, not only to Treasury, but also HUD. And to that end, Claudia, do you have comments?
Sure. Good afternoon. Claudia Monterrosa with HZLA. And as Sam very well stated, we have been working together on opportunity zones, and from a housing perspective, and what our mission is to really look at the investment and how that's going to really benefit those communities. Just by way of summarizing, there are 3 sets of public comments that are being sought. The first set is due this month on the 31st, and this is an RFI, a request for information on data collection. So that's specific to that, and we are going to be working with EWDD on those. Then HUD is going to also has a public comment period that is due June 17 on responses to regarding HUD policies and how those are going to be included and how they're going to be addressed in terms of the HUD programs and opportunity zones and how those are going to be working together. And in addition to that, there's another set of comments that are due in July 1st, and that is going to be regarding the investment in qualified opportunity funds. So for purposes of today's conversation on the data collection, we do have some initial thoughts. We've shared some of those initial thoughts with EWDD, and we're going to continue working on those this week so that we can make the deadline. But in general, the opportunity zones lack investment criteria that prioritizes benefits to low-income residents and small businesses. The regulations do not include protections against residential and commercial displacement. There is very little guidance as to what investors can declare and their intentions and who they intend to benefit. Does not demonstrate that low-income residents and communities of color within the opportunity zones have an opportunity to benefit from equitable growth and prosperity, including communities that are aligned with affordable housing, transportation options, health care facilities, healthy food and retails, quality of education, and job growth and development. So to that end, one of our initial recommendations is to ensure that there is transparency in data collection, reporting, and analysis on a regular basis, protect existing tenants and businesses in the opportunity zones, and prevent displacement to a large extent possible. Basically, take advantage of the opportunities and figure out a way that the data collected is going to ensure that.
We will make sure that that residents and businesses are not displaced, correct?
That's correct, because we are very concerned from that perspective. Since the opportunity zones that have been selected are already in gentrifying areas in the city and throughout the city, and there's a really good equitable distribution of the opportunity zones. There's 200 census tracts in the city that were selected. Some, many in South LA, and some in City 7, and also in the City 15. And so we want to make sure that we're addressing all these through a data collection and to really have local governments have a say, or at least help inform how the opportunity zones should be, investments should be shaped. And we're asking for there to be a public vetting process of some sort, and a list of data that we would like to have collected so that we can actually utilize that and compare what existed before, how is this investment really helping and benefiting those communities. We are conscious that this investment is here for 10 years. We're already on year 2 of the opportunity zone, so we need to make the most out of that. So open for business, but also be very conscientious of what is happening in our local areas, in particular in those census tracts. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Sure. Well, I'm glad you raised those issues. They certainly have been mentioned not only here locally but nationally in terms of the collateral challenges, I think you said, Sam, that the program provides. I think accountability is certainly important. And community benefits. You're right. It's not really clear what how the community is going to benefit. It's clear how the investor benefits.
Yes.
but not so clear how the community really benefits. So I welcome the fact that we are going to be challenging, or at least submitting some points of view on that. More kind of dialing down. How many projects have we identified in the city of LA, or have we, to your knowledge, identified potential projects that could qualify?
Certainly. There are 193 zones in the city of Los Angeles. And I think since the last time we probably met regarding opportunity zones, just to bring you to speed, there is a website that's live right now. There's a prospectus wherein we work with a number of different council offices to get information regarding specific projects in their area.
Right. How many have you identified through that process?
How many?
How many potential projects have come to you from
Oh gosh,
the council offices?
From council offices and just our own reconnaissance,
Yeah.
they're well over. I mean, they're well over 50 projects or so. However, what's worth noting is not all projects necessarily are seeking opportunity fund money or opportunity zone fund investors. So what we're looking to also consider, if you will, is this virtual marketing platform whereby, well, it'll be digital, whereby we're matching fund managers with specific projects. However, cautiously, we're proceeding with that because of the possibility of some disclaimer issues. And so we're working with the city attorney's office to make certain we don't want to follow any laws and sort of playing matchmaker. So we really have to be careful in that regard. Yes, our phone has been ringing, with folks looking for money who are just outside of an opportunity zone. And conversely, there are those that have money that are looking for projects. So we're careful, we're treading lightly. I might also add, Allison from CD15 let us know about the Rockefeller money. So there's some foundation money out there right now that's available to certain public concerns and certainly private concerns to help them come up with innovative strategies to tap into opportunity zone opportunities. And so I know last week I met with staff to see how we can respond to that and see if we can bring additional resources, non-general fund resources to bear to assist us as we go about marketing opportunity zones and also ultimately bringing about sustainable economic development in communities.
I'd also add that on projects that the council has instructed us to work on, we are taking every opportunity to see if opportunity zones are an option to help with that project in any way, shape, or form. So there are a number of economic development projects in the city right now ongoing. We're looking for ways to make them happen faster, sooner, and to bring new resources in. And this is one tool that we're trying to bring to bear on all of those.
But I mean, there's specific requirements for opportunity zone, correct? I mean,
Correct.
They have to be
Actually in the zone.
they have to be in the zone. They've got to be entitled already, or do they?
Yeah, there is a timeline, but
Yeah.
they don't have to be entitled right now, as long as they're...
Entitled by the time the money flows. Well, still lots of uncertainties. I think that's what we're trying to tighten up.
Right. The challenge is for some real estate projects, they do have to be off the ground within 18 to 20 months. So there's a very aggressive timeline in terms of the investment. And then they have to choose to invest for a total of 10 years in order for them to gain all the tax benefits that are outlined in the opportunity zone. So that makes it a little bit challenging for the city, not just here, but in general in California. But those are the existing regulations right now. We're waiting to see if they're going to be expanding or changing those regulations at the state treasury.
So although the website is live, it's still a work in progress. I mean, it's
It's live. It continues to evolve. I mean, as we see the opportunity to tweak it, we'll do that. But it's robust. It competes with any other opportunity zone website that's out there. Certainly it does the basics in terms of outlining what opportunity zones are, but ultimately it highlights the benefits of coming to the city of Los Angeles.
yeah,
And that's what
and it should highlight the project. I mean, the potential project site, right? I mean, we don't necessarily have to sell the fact that opportunity zones are good, but we want to say, hey, this is a project that's eligible that we think makes sense.
Agreed.
Yeah. Members, Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes, you mentioned about the tax structure and how right now the state treasury is considering any.
I'm sorry. So I meant to say the U.S. Treasury,
Right.
but at the state
state
level,
is
there
looking
are
at
two or one proposed legislation,
Right.
one by the governor that would look to have some hooks embedded in order for the state tax code to conform to the U.S. Treasury
Got it.
tax benefits.
Because that would make it more basically generate more interest in competing with other states, for example.
That's
that have.
correct, because the state of California still has, as far as I know, the existing tax regulations. So they're looking to see how they can be in conformance with the U.S. Treasury.
Do we know how
regulations.
far along that conversation is and where that's at?
It's my understanding that the governor had made that proposal in his budget, and that budget is to be approved by June 15th. So we should know relatively quickly whether that's there. There's also a bill that covers this matter. So if it isn't handled in the budget, there's a separate bill that would be able to track that.
Got it. Thank you.
Good. Mr. Buscano.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. And I see opportunity zones as another tool in the toolbox to really spark economic development as it relates to housing, among others. And just the item that we just discussed with the SEDS, that will help as well. And then the item we'll be speaking on item 18 on the EFIDs will be another tool. You mentioned, ma'am, can you just walk me through the concerns, which I clearly understand, representing parts of South Los Angeles, the protections that we'll be seeking? Is it my understanding that these types of protections will be a policy decision-making from the committee and onto council, or are you just raising these concerns?
We're raising these concerns because currently there is no guidance or any structure from the U.S. Treasury allowing local governments to have really direct input in how the opportunity zones funding gets actually applied in the census tracts.
Because I embrace private funds, private equity private investment coming into the district, something that I've been talking about the last 7 years. So this will give us a tool. Also embrace a community that is of all income levels, and that's why we're moving forward on some key housing projects. Okay, so you're just going to be waiting on how we're going to make these concerns known.
So the idea is that we will work together. Well, you go ahead. Go ahead,
More
Sam.
specifically, similar to what we
Sending
did.
a letter to the Treasury? Okay.
Exactly. We'll send a letter, in this case, not only to Treasury, but also HUD. And so we'll do that. Treasury is due on the 31st, and we have a draft in substantial form already, so that'll go out in a timely manner.
Okay.
And
I'm just cautious. I don't want to disincentivize these types of investments coming into our city, right?
That's correct, and I've had internal discussions with our general manager at HSID, and that this is an economic opportunity tool, and so we're raising some lack of transparency in the term of how this investment is going to come into the city. So we definitely welcome the investment and the opportunity to have private investors come here.
More open about it.
But also be concerned about and very aware that there is potentially unintended consequences in some of these areas. And so how are these communities where there's been widespread disinvestment are going to directly benefit from job growth, from investment in real estate, and really, address the issues that we've been dealing with in terms of the cost of living, the high rents, both for commercial and residential, rents, and this may or may not, but we are looking to just raise these concerns, whether the U.S. Treasury accepts this or figures out a way to provide a little bit more guidance. That's really what the whole purpose of the request for information from the U.S. Treasury is, to get the input from that. And this is something that is being nationally monitored by a lot of different nationwide organizations, including investment funds and those for-profit like Enterprise, LISC, and NEF. So very, very many nonprofits and national organizations and financial institutions are looking at this very, very carefully.
And will council office have an opportunity to see the comment letters that will be prior to being sent?
yes, well,
That's a easy question to answer. That's an easy question to answer.
we've yet to release them, but certainly once they're ready, just prior to signature or after signing, we'll get those to each of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, on behalf of CD15 and to those who are seeking to take advantage of this opportunity, please come to CD15.
Now that word has officially been...
Thank you very much, Monica. I do know of, I believe, 2 or 3 projects that they're considering, and one changed hands that's already being built and will soon open Q1 of 20. That's changed hands because of the opportunity zone incentives. So, okay, thank you so much for the...
Well, again, we're anxious to remain informed as this process moves forward. So in addition to the letter, if you can come back say in 3 months, just give us an update on where we are, what's going on with the Opportunity Zone process, and how we're going to ensure our success.
I'm reminded, Mr. Chair, we were at National League of Cities earlier this year, and it was standing room only with municipal leaders around the country on this specific issue, because those are some of the concerns. In fact, the fire marshal had to come in and clear the room because it was just a lot of interest, and this is something thanks for the shout out to Allison. The partnership with NLC and Rockefeller is strong, and we need to take advantage of those opportunities. Thank you.
And maybe we can have some input with the new incoming president about these issues.
Well, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Just to reiterate, the first comments are due this Friday, May 31st. So the departments will be rushing out a letter for that.
All right, good. We can just get a copy of that. That'd be great.
Perfect.
Any other things, members? Any other comments? Okay, thank you. Thanks for the report, and we will approve the motion as presented. Okay, item 17.
Item number 17 are reports from the City Administrative Officer and the Housing and Community Investment Department relative to an agreement with Azure Development Incorporated for the development of the property into affordable housing and commercial project located at 110 South Boyle Avenue on May 22nd of this year. The Housing Committee approved this matter.
Okay. I think we have a report with an amendment.
Good afternoon. Compact Tang with Housing Committee, ACID LA. ACID requests that recommendation 2A be amended as follows. Find, based on the independent judgment of the decision maker, after consideration of the whole of the administrative record, the project located at 110 South Boyle Avenue, Los Angeles, California, 90033, assessor parcel number 5174-018-900, property, was assessed in the previously certified environmental impact report EIR SCH number 1997061065, certified on September 17, 1998, and pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15162 and 15164, and the addendum dated January 2019, that no major revisions to the EIR are required and no subsequent EIR or negative declaration is required for approval of the project.
Okay, well, thank you for these technical amendments. Can you just tell us give us an overview of the project?
So, ACID LA requests council to request the mayor to exercise an option to buy a CRA LA DT LA property located on 1110 South Boyle Avenue. ACID also requests the authority to negotiate and execute a development and disposition agreement with Azure Development. The property is located at the corner of 1st and Boyle Avenue with a parcel size of 14,620. The option agreement expires June 30th, 2019. The proposed development is for a mixed-use project of supportive housing and commercial development. A total of 44 units, of which 43 will be supportive housing, and a 7,500 commercial rental space would be divided to up to 3 units. We have selected, again, Azure Development with their co-partner, Many Mansions, to develop the site.
Okay. Anything to add to that? Anybody?
No, there's Nathan Holmes with the CAO. The city acquired the option on 10 different future development sites so that we could ensure that whatever developments went in had robust community investment, and this is just a perfect example of that. You know, we have 43 permanent supportive units right by transit, and so it's, you know, a gold star project, and we're happy to be here today.
Okay, good. Members, any questions?
Just happy to see Nate Holmes here. That's all I got to say.
Go, Nate. Anything else?
We miss you, Nate.
Chair, Oscar Ishko with the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst. Just for further clarification, the amendment to recommendation 2A is just we inserted language to properly identify the property so that where property is mentioned throughout the recommendations carries on. So.
Okay, great. Any other questions, comments, members? Okay, we will approve recommendation as amended. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, last but not least, another tool in the toolbox.
Come on, say it.
Item number 18 is a motion from council members Buscaino and O'Farrell relative to the steps necessary to initiate and complete an enhanced infrastructure financing district, or EIFD, in the harbor area.
Okay, Mr. Busquiano, why don't I let you tee this one up for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so we had an opportunity to work with Skag during its request for grants, and we partnered with Cosmont, who was in partnership with Skag, to look at special district pilot projects. And we were awarded, of the three, ourselves, the St. Peter Wilmington waterfront, as well as the Vermont Transit Corridor and the West Santa Ana Branch Transit Corridor. So first and foremost, I want to thank Skag for allowing us to look at, again, another tool in the toolbox as it relates to financing tools that fund projects such as affordable housing, mixed-use developments, transit-oriented projects, wastewater, groundwater improvements, parks and open space, industrial structures, civic infrastructure, and among others. So we have, and I know other colleagues that we work with have interest in EIFDs, including Councilmember Bonin, Councilmember O'Farrell, Councilmember Weezer as well, CD14. So, and of course, CD9 as well, and Rodriguez. These are all opportunities. So I think we in CD15, I know we've been talking about it citywide, but having this partnership and having this funded through Skag has allowed us to move a little bit further in establishing an EIFD. I know CLA has set the framework on how to go about setting an EIFD, but we're a little bit, as I was talking to John Reamer earlier, this is a little bit more baked, and we're ready to rock and roll on it. So with that, we would need some council direction and approval. But before that, Mr. Chair, you have an opportunity here to hear firsthand why we are so worthy of an EFID in the Wilmington and San Pedro waterfront districts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Joe Dieguez. I'm a Senior Vice President with Cosmont Companies. With me here today is Kimberly Clark with Skag, and my colleague Felicia Williams also with Cosmont. Just for context for this motion, we'll talk a little bit about the pilot, briefly, about the pilot project program, background about these project areas, and status and next steps. So, as the council member alluded to, with the Skag pilot project program, we're looking at this point, over 8, I believe, pilot projects in the Skag region, all focused on tax increment financing, utilizing the new tool set after redevelopment agencies went away to finance different types of infrastructure, affordable housing, and some other priorities. From Skag's perspective, it's to implement their regional transportation plan, sustainable community strategy. In reviewing the various projects that have come to Skag in competing for this program, there are, among others, 5 criteria listed on this page that we look at to determine initial feasibility. Among those, project areas with high potential for development or redevelopment in the near to midterm, let's say 5 to 10 years. Project areas that support mixed use, transit-oriented development in many cases, and have the zoning in place to let that happen. Transportation and related infrastructure that will be catalytic to that private sector investment and development. And infrastructure that's not just project-specific, but regional and community-wide in nature. And lastly, but certainly not least, the areas have potential due to things like property tax capture rate and things like that to actually have funding capacity to make things happen. So, as was said, San Pedro Wilmington waterfront areas, Vermont Transit Corridor, West Santa Ana Branch Transit Corridor, including a portion of Los Angeles, we're all deemed qualified for this program based on those criteria. So we'll just give again, a sort of a status update on where these things are. At a high level, though, San Pedro Wilmington was evaluated, deemed to be feasible. We'll talk a little bit about that area specifically. The other 2 are really just getting off the ground. These are really driven by Metro, the Vermont Transit Corridor and West Santa Ana Branch Corridor projects, who came to Skag for the program, and we will, of course, as it's just getting off the ground, be in touch with various city folks on outreach. The tools that we're talking about. So, tax increment financing on the left-hand side of the page, 4 main tools available to us today. The one you hear most often, Enhanced Infrastructure Financing Districts, EIFDs. It's been introduced in 2014 and lots of revisions since then. It continues to get better, focus on infrastructure and affordable housing. Another one that's a bit more specific, SIFDs, very similar. These are Seaport Infrastructure Financing Districts. These have potential relevance to the harbor area, but these are really districts that are focused just on funding harbor infrastructure, as opposed to trying to do other things in addition, like affordable housing and other types of infrastructure. Third, Community Revitalization and Investment Authorities, CREAs, an even greater emphasis on affordable housing, where 25% of the funds must be set aside for affordable housing set aside, and areas have to qualify to even participate in the CREA program based on income, crime, unemployment, a series of metrics. The last one is the Affordable Housing Authority. That one is completely dedicated to housing. 95% of funding has to be spent on affordable housing, much less of a focus on infrastructure. The tools on the right-hand side of the page are not really tax increment tools, not really the focus of the Skag pilot project program, but just tools that we keep our eyes on as CEQA and entitlement streamlining tools introduced in the most recent years in the legislature. I won't spend too much time talking about them. I just want to touch on a couple of the main characteristics of EIFD. This is not a brand new tool. I mean, infrastructure financing districts did exist before. These were an improvement on that law. Again, the emphasis is on infrastructure and affordable housing. The district lifespan is 45 years plus. 45-year clock starts ticking on the approval to issue debt. The entity that governs it is a new entity. It's called the Public Financing Authority. It's comprised of, well, it really depends on who's contributing money. If it were a city district going alone, it would be city council members along with at least 2 public members. If we solicited funding from the county, it would likely be a composition of city council members and county supervisors, along, again, with members of the public. There's no public vote required to create this district. There is currently a 55% voter requirement to issue debt. There's currently legislation, SB 128, at the legislature that would amend this requirement to eliminate the vote requirement to issue debt, but this is as it is today. School districts cannot contribute increment even if they wanted to. And just to make it clear on the last point, this is not an increase in property tax. This is not like a community facilities district or an assessment district or a BID. This is property tax increment. City, county, other entities choosing to dedicate a portion of future property tax to a special purpose entity to fund infrastructure and housing. It's a really quick idea of the different things, as the council member mentioned, that EIFTs can fund. Very broad and inclusive list that begins with the words including but not limited to, and then goes through all these water, sewer, roadway, transit, affordable housing is included, remediation. They even point out child care facilities, parks, and open space. So again, very broad and inclusive. Just want to point out on this page 6, these are being implemented and evaluated all across the state. City of Los Angeles certainly would not be alone. 3 have been formed to date in West Sacramento and San Diego, and 1 in Los Angeles County in the city of Laverne. One of the other Skag pilot projects in the city of Placentia in Orange County is hot on the heels of Laverne. Both the city of Placentia and the county of Orange have adopted what's called a resolution of intention, which is that first step to district formation. The city was in February, county was in April, and today we're expecting to finalize that infrastructure financing plan for circulation. So it's moving along very quickly and positively. It would be the first city-county partnership in the state for one of these districts. So the main focus, the earliest one of the pilots was the San Pedro-Wilmington waterfront area on this page 7. We're overlaying opportunity zones, as obviously folks have heard today. Opportunity zones are critically important, and we have continued to keep our eye on them even in the context of the EIFD analysis. We see it as a very good complement to EIFD from the private sector perspective. But the preliminary study area in San Pedro-Wilmington is a little over 800 acres. A lot of these projects you see listed here in the legend have been included. We've done multiple iterations of this study to determine different levels of potential property tax increment creation. Again, see a high level of feasibility. We would say that we're in the stakeholder outreach phase right now. A big part of that is presenting to this committee today, obviously happy to take further feedback, revise the analysis as city staff or council may direct us. I'll come back to the next steps at the end. Just want to quickly introduce or talk about the Vermont Transit Corridor and West Santa Ana Branch. Vermont Transit Corridor on page 8, just getting off the ground. Again, there's an initial study area been drafted of a quarter-mile and half-mile radius around the alignment. It's been expanded recently to, on the south side, to the South Bay Silver Line Pacific Coast Highway Transitway Station. It's significant, 12.4 miles. It's a big area. This is one of those that was introduced by Metro for Skag study, and by extension, Cosmon. Along with that, through Metro was the West Santa Ana Branch Corridor as a study area. This 20 miles, again, from downtown to Artesia. We're trying to do here is zoom in on this page to pull out the area within the City of Los Angeles jurisdiction. So you see some within downtown proper and a little bit south. It's difficult to see, we know, but the alignment alternatives that would include the city are all the dash lines you see on this page. The sort of orange dash lines, the light blue dash line, and that purple dash line extending south will be part of the study area, including the City of Los Angeles. Again, just getting off the ground, data collection phase right now will certainly be in further outreach with city stakeholders. Just wanted to introduce it. In all of these pilots, we are at least evaluating the potential for county participation. The County of Los Angeles has adopted, originally in August of 2017, a policy to evaluate participation in these districts. They've laid out a rubric, which we have here on this page, which we really measure up favorably against in all of our areas, certainly in San Pedro, Wilmington. In terms of the minimum property tax share, City of Los Angeles meets the 15-cent threshold set by the county. We're at, on average in this area, 26 cents on the dollar. That's this table on the bottom of the page. And we're checking all these boxes in terms of the potential net impact on the county general fund, the supporting of board priorities like affordable housing, homeless prevention, workforce development, certainly sustainability. Clearly, when we're talking about a port area, clear regional and community-wide significance, so we check that box. Affordable housing, we've got some significant affordable housing opportunity certainly in the downtown San Pedro area, which help us to address this box. And the but-for test, we believe there's a very significant case to be made that this is a tool that needs to be implemented to make certain things happen, which is what the county wants to see, that it's a tool that needs to be implemented to make things happen. We just want to touch very quickly legislation process. The rules are changing and they're getting better in Cosmon's opinion. I think Skag would agree. There's 3 bills currently that we're tracking. SB 5 is essentially the ability for the state to participate financially via the Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund mechanism. This has been drafted very flexibly in terms of the state's ability to even front load dollars in the beginning to help a district get off the ground. So we track this one very closely. It's moving along well. We think it has positive momentum. SB 128 is that one that I mentioned about eliminating the 55% vote to issue debt. This one seems to also be progressing with positive momentum. And the last one is AB 11. This would be a brand new district, Affordable Housing and Infrastructure Agency. It's pretty similar to CREA. CREA's got 25% affordable housing set aside. This one has 30%, so an even greater emphasis on affordable housing. What we've heard from the governor's messaging in his budget and his State of the State address is that he's not so much focused on introducing more and more new tools to be evaluated. He's more focused on the existing tool set. So this one we're not seeing with much momentum, but it's still out there in draft form. We'll continue to track it. So our next steps. So as mentioned, for San Pedro, Wilmington, preliminary analysis complete in multiple iterations, high level of feasibility. Next steps, we're continuing the stakeholder outreach phase. The first administrative step is the step mentioned in the motion, which is an adoption of a resolution of intent, which is just saying that you're serious about forming this district. And it would be the beginnings of establishing that boundary, talking about who would represent the city on that board, the Public Financing Authority within this district. So that would be the first administrative action to come back with. We've certainly have experience with that, most recently in Placentia, for both the city and the county. That would be the next step for San Pedro, Wilmington. As for the others, again, just getting off the ground, evaluating district types, boundary alternatives, planned proposed projects, the types of infrastructure that would be paid for, what are the dollars in terms of funding capacity even available, what's the potential for county cooperation in those areas, and then, of course, the next steps and timing for those. Skag, and by extension, Cosmon expects to be back in touch with various city stakeholders on those projects. Of course, we'll remain involved on San Pedro, Wilmington. The completion of the draft analysis for those other two, Vermont Corridor and West Santa Ana Branch, is expected in the fall, September, October of this year. So that's the overview. Would love to answer any questions from the committee. And again, with me is Kim Clark from Skag and Felicia Williams from Cosmon to assist.
Well, thanks for the report. This is an exciting, I think, another exciting opportunity, and glad to know that that the harbor area is in the forefront of making some good things happen. Talk a little bit again about the role of the county in this governance structure, and when do they take action that lets us know they're in or they're out, or what's the? I know we've checked the boxes, but when are they going to take some formal action?
Yeah. Well, the way we've been doing it in other places, the way it's worked well is even before anyone takes a formal action like adopting that resolution of intent, there are sort of informal conversations. We have the benefit of having met with the county staff and supervisorial staff and administrative staff on this topic before through Skag and otherwise. That would be a good step to continue with. We've had some preliminary discussion already to date with Supervisor Hahn's office. So it's informal discussions at first. How real is it? What's your real interest before we start trying to craft this thing to be more appealing to you? But I'd say that's where we're at now. The first official action would sort of be parallel. The city would adopt its resolution of intention to form the district, and the county would adopt their own resolution of intention to participate. And by both of those actions, it would be both of those entities, the city and the county, proposing who they would each choose to represent the city and county respectively on the EIFD governing board.
So what does this board look like? 10, 15, 5?
The simplest example is what we're dealing with in Placentia right now, 5. You've got 2 city council members, 1 county board member whose district it's in, and 2 members of the public. That 2 members of the public is required. City of LA is a very unique place as far as these districts are concerned. We would expect it to be larger for a district like this. But there are no rules. It's just the minimum. The minimum is you have the majority of the board. If it's 5, it's at least 3 out of 5, that are either city council or county board members, but there's no requirement beyond that as far as how many of each. What we've been seeing happening so far is that it just sort of is commensurate with who's giving how many dollars. If the city of Los Angeles were contributing a greater share of dollars, we would expect that they would have greater membership on the board. That would be our recommendation. So it's quite flexible. It's more
And this the EIFD, this model after something successful in other states, or how did it evolve?
Yeah, tax increment financing has been around for a very long time in California, since RDA was started decades ago. This is just one form of it. EIFD is just one form of tax increment financing. We were only without it for a couple years, 2012, 2013, 2014. Before EIFDs were introduced. So it's not completely brand new. Again, this one, EIFD, came out of law that already existed, IFD law, Infrastructure Financing District Law. EIFDs took that, made it more broad in terms of what you can pay for, and did a couple of other things to sort of calm the worries of folks who had scars from redevelopment, like making sure the focus was on infrastructure and affordable housing, made sure that you could only take money from people who agreed to give it, like the county and other special districts, and protected schools by not letting them participate even if they wanted to. So it's sort of an evolution.
Okay. Joe, any questions?
This is, thanks again, Mr. Chairman, for scheduling this, and I appreciate the presentation. I don't know, Kimberly, you want to speak on behalf of Skag, or just give you that opportunity?
Thanks very much for the opportunity, Councilmember. We're really enthused about the project for the San Pedro Wilmington waterfront, as well as the other projects that we have going on with the City of LA. The reason why Skag wanted to participate in this partnership is because of the good work that's already been happening on the ground, and we see the opportunity here for utilizing this tool, which has been sparingly used throughout the state. We see the City of Los Angeles as leaders in this area and want to continue this partnership to allow other jurisdictions throughout the region to also have this tool.
Appreciate that. And yes, with the investments going on Avalon and Wilmington and Alta Sea and the public market moving, as well as our housing increase there in the downtown San Pedro region. This will be an added tool. So just some technicalities, Mr. Chair. We're just waiting on now in order to continue to move on this, we'll send this to council if approved today. But we also need the help of the Budget and Finance Committee to move and support a citywide EIFD policy, and that's waiting to be heard in committee. We're hoping we're working hand in hand with Mr. Krikorian's office to get that scheduled. So with that, I really appreciate the presentation. This is one step that we've been waiting for, and I do see Mr. Wickham here. John, I don't know if you wanted to speak on. You're good. Okay, and we're hopeful that COSMAT meets with the CLA and Mr. Wickham here in the coming days, so that we can continue to move on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rodriguez, anything? Okay, well, again, thank you for the presentation. We're excited about the prospects, and with no objection, we will adopt the motion as presented. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. CLA, what's next before us?
Mr. Chair, the desk is clear.
All right, I will accept that. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.
I'm glad you accept.